with the podcast Echo, or we are still here, depending on whether you're watching them all in one go or whether you're spreading them out a little bit.
Still going.
Still going. So this one was my choice, and it is another one of Lewis Raymond Taylor's Adversities to Asset podcasts that I have worked my way through. I'm going to be really honest, that before these podcasts, other than Serial, which we'll talk about another time, I'd not really listened to any podcasts. So this was kind of like my first like proper block of podcasts that I'd listened to. So I think probably why I've kind of started with these, because they've really resonated with me massively. But obviously this one is Danny Morel. So this one is Success to Spirituality. It's one that resonated with me for quite a few reasons. But I'm quite a spiritual person, and plant medicine and various other things that we'll talk about. But I think this is what I think I've probably listened to this one about 5 or 6 times. And I did listen to it again this morning, but it's one of the very few ones where I've actually wanted to watch it on YouTube as well, because I kind of wanted to visually see. I don't know, it's a weird one. It's one of the very few that's made me want to watch it on YouTube as well, because obviously they're all on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I have like an hour and a half in the morning, which is my hour and a half, and I go off and do my little side job. And what I do in that hour and a half is I listen to podcasts, or I listen to it was my TCM training, but I'm finished with that now. So that's kind of what I do in that hour and a half. And this one, I think I've listened to this one at least 5 times, and I've found it. Yeah, it's probably one of my favourites. It's one of the shorter ones as well out of them.
I was going to say, I think the first thing that struck me was that the accessibility of it, of being just over 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So unlike my one, which is a 2-hour marathon last week, this is wholly like digestible. Firstly, I think it gets you straight away, because his opening line, I think, in that kind of preview thing that you begin with, like the clips from the session, was the quote, "No one has mastered life." I thought, how succinct
it's
is
quite
that?
simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's simple, but so every time you hear that kind of version of that phrase, you're reminded of I've seen recently where people have echoed out loud going, is it only me? Is it I'm the only one with these issues and challenges and stuff like that? But I'm reminded of the quote my coach said of we've all got the same challenges, we just live in different houses.
Yeah.
So when Danny said on this podcast an opening line that no one has mastered life, it reminds you that there is no kind of as much as we like to think there is the point or place where you'd be you know everything, you've clocked it, you've mastered it. Nobody has. It feels like at times to us that it does, she's got it made or he's got it made and stuff like that. But in reality, and the podcast will go to show that there's not many examples like that. We just make those stories up for ourselves.
Agreed. I mean, I remember it really vividly, actually. When I was younger, like a lot younger, I used to look at people and think that they had it sussed out. Do you know what I mean? He looked really happy. And as you get older, sorry, I'm still a bit not very well. So as you get older, you realise that it doesn't matter how happy someone is. Everybody's got their own set of shit, their own absolute bollocks that one way or another in the background they're dealing with. And no matter how outwardly happy anybody looks, everyone's got something going on that is kind of like a thorn in their side. I think anybody that says that they haven't is probably lying. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't have to affect you in a day-to-day, in a change, in a life-altering way, because it just doesn't have to be like that. And that's one of the things that I really like about this podcast. He talks quite strongly about his spiritual journey and how I don't know whether anybody else hears it, but it's almost about him saying that his corporate journey was what led him to his spirituality, and without it wouldn't have had the other, but that's ultimately not what he wanted. And I really felt that massively.
Well, I think they picked that part up right in the middle where I think Lewis pointed out that like your business was actually, I forget the actual phrase, but something like it was a hindrance or the trigger to go, actually, you've achieved all of this. And it's a common thing that, that immediately harked me back to one of my key points in my transformation space of, we set your self-worth externally. If I get that thing or that status or that outcome, that's what will make me happy. So more money or relationship or career progression or whatever. But you end up either getting it and going, what, is that it? Yeah. I think they make the point about, youngsters wanting the latest Mercedes car.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, you get it. Oh, now I want a jet. It just like, it's because you're trying to fulfill your ultimate need via a symptom. So I think Danny himself called it a band-aid approach to solutions.
Yeah, he did.
And then the idea that you can utilize things like then Lewis brought his story in of like his recovery from drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
The fact that you use those things as like a means of escape from the thing you're trying to fill the hole of, basically.
Yeah, I mean it is. I think it resonated really strongly. My parents have a really good relationship now, and my mum remarried and met my dad when I was 11, and I think they got married when I was 12. But prior to that, there was a lot of being passed from pillar to post between my parents, and in those really informative years where actually it should have been much more settled and much more grounded, and it should have had that unconditional love of both your parents. I'm not saying that it wasn't there, but I was ferried backwards and forwards between them. And I made right at the very beginning, sorry, just to digress a second, but right at the very beginning of the podcast, he talks about being late and how he hates being late. And obviously this is something that I've expressed to you about, is that I hate being late. And I was poorly last week, and you were running a bit late, and it really did knock me, and it isn't your fault. And actually I recently had a coaching session and had a really good discussion about it, and it came to the forefront of my mind because of listening to this podcast. But what it made me realize is that when my parents used to ferry me backwards and forwards in between them, well, as I got a little bit older, rather than my dad driving to pick me up, the 2.5 hours that it was, and then having to drop me off again, and him having to make 2 journeys on a Friday or a Saturday and then again on a Sunday, they used to put me on a National Express coach. So, and we've talked about this before. And I realized after my coaching session yesterday that I think this thing that I'm holding on to about punctuality is based around the fact that a lot of time my dad wasn't there, or he was late. And I think that that's formed a massive thing in my psyche. That actually what my coach pointed out to me yesterday was that the anger and resentment that I feel towards people when they are late as an adult is actually towards him and not towards that person. And that's just how it's coming out, and it's almost feeding my ego, because that's my ego there saying, well, you can't be late for me, but actually it results right back to that. So I had a bit of a breakthrough on that yesterday, like a really clear breakthrough, but I think that started with this podcast.
I think it's a really strong example to utilize again, because it takes what we view as a common symptom nowadays, like I don't like being late, I want to be punctual, and we dig into it beyond the symptom and go, okay, that's come from, as you related, having to wait for a parent to pick you up. Now you mentioned it at a coach station. People could see it as like a kid being picked up from school. That's more of a local example where their parents should be here at any minute, and they're shouldn't be too far away. But here's like, you've just travelled this far on a coach journey, you're now waiting for your parent to pick you up. So it's a programming experience of abandonment, of not a permanent state, but those little instances here and there, they add up. And as you said, when you express that anger now towards other people, which is a natural emotion and is okay, it is, as you say, it's harking back to when you're a child, going, wait, is this developing a sense of I'm not good enough to be picked up on time? Now, you
Yeah.
didn't necessarily vocalize it in those words at that point, but it's that feeling, because like you're standing on your own, strangers all around going about their, you know, business, you know, in the station, and you're like, where is the person that's meant to be looking after me? Because obviously we develop that bond from caregivers. Indeed, they mention it in the podcast, right? That
Yeah.
it's the number one wound.
Yeah.
The
mum
number
and dad
one wound from preventing you from becoming what you want to be. It's that relationship that you have with your parents, which I immediately, the two words that came up to me were programming experiences.
Yeah.
You know, they use similar language throughout in the podcast to go, yeah, Lewis harked back to his own example. All of my issues today stem from daddy issues.
Yeah.
Just wanting that love from my dad. But he mistook that as wanting the need for significance to be met. One of his core human needs. It's like, actually, it weren't significance. I was looking for love because I didn't get it from my dad.
See, I kind of did a really similar thing, but in a different way. I just acted out massively. And I think from probably about 12 until about 15, I, without question, I was just an absolute arsehole. How I never got arrested and into more trouble, I will never know. I mean, I got beat up.
I'd never have guessed.
Yeah, well, I got beat up. I got in with the wrong people. I mean, I'm no longer a prisoner to that. But there was a really long time that I wouldn't even sign up on Facebook because I was worried that these people that I would been knocking about with during this point in my life where I was, because I think I was getting into trouble. And when I was getting into trouble, I was actually getting their attention. And actually, any attention was better than no attention at all. And I only got that through acting out. And it was, I think I was probably like heading towards sort of 14, 15, and my mum sent me to live with my real dad. I wanted to go, but that's kind of how it went. And that was horrendous because me and my stepmother, I mean, she's passed away now. We made her peace before she died, which I'm really grateful for. But that wasn't any better for me because I did not have a good relationship. I'd only ever been there every other weekend. I didn't really fit into the dynamics of their family because they've got two children, my brother and sister. And actually, then I started acting out even worse. Like, I genuinely sometimes question how I even made it to 16, if I'm honest. But I did learn from it. And I reached a point where I made a decision that I had to take responsibility for my own shit, and that no matter what happened, and there were a lot of, not with my mum and my dad, but with my dad and my stepmom, there were a lot of forced lies that I was pushed to take a part in as a child, to hold secrets for them, that put me in a really awkward situation with the rest of my family. So then when I was going out and acting out and I was being an absolute little shit, then all of a sudden it wasn't acceptable for me to behave like that and do these things. But when they wanted me to do it, it was okay. So it was really confusing. It was really confusing. But now I kind of look back on it and I'm really grateful everything kind of happened the way that it did, because now I'm sat here with these experiences helping other people get through theirs. And that kind of makes it worthwhile. And I'm quite happy with who I am now. And I am not a prisoner to that past. I see it as my adversity into an asset. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
But yeah, a lot of what they talked about in this really resonated. But I think I felt it quite deeply because although I was always loved, there was no question about that. My mum, my dad, my stepmom, they all loved me, but they were trying the very best that they could in the situation that they were in. And ultimately what that led to was a certain amount of not intentional, but unintentional neglect of this child that was stuck in between the pair of them.
100%. And indeed, they remark the same in the podcast themselves in the same language, right? That, you know, was it Danny said that you got the attention and the love and being cared for. So like, you know, they were in that active practice, but in terms of knowing that you were loved.
It was different, yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, and even Lewis mentioned that he wasn't in that kind of family where they talk, you know, speak when you're spoken to, no sort of affection towards each other, that kind of thing. So you're right in that ultimately it is a generational thing, which I think they sort of hinted at, with that your parents have only, you know, tried to raise you the best they can from what they know, and they know from your grandparents who knew from etc., etc. So it is generational. And you know, an analogy that sprung to me whilst listening to that was the faulty production line. So this is something my coach told me about. Of like, if you imagine like a car assembly plant, you know, a car gets built on a production line where each unit or like number of people or robots will add to the car. So like you begin with the chassis, then someone puts the engine in, then tires, etc., etc. So that if the car came out down the line and it's malfunctioned at one point, you can pinpoint it back to, oh, you know, the exhaust doesn't work or whatever. So you pinpoint it back to the point in the production line where the exhaust got put in or whatever, and go, right, you can pinpoint it. If you imagine humans getting produced in the same manner, we begin as like this empty chassis that we get programmed with different experiences as we go along the line in life. But it's difficult to untie where the shit that we get involved with and encounter comes from, because it's all over the line going, well, which part of the line is it? But in truth, it's because our caregivers, our environment all play a part, that it's a little bit more difficult to pick it apart. But that production line has only borne semblance to what our parents were able to give us at the time, the best they could. Most of us are brought up in that regard. So, you know, it is typical, not even typical, sorry. It is easy just to fall into a blame game going, oh, it was their fault. I'm going to blame you for all of my troubles and woes and issues. But really going back to what you said about taking your own responsibility.
Yeah.
Whilst not going, look, it's their fault, you're bad people. We're all just trying to find and understand our own way.
I don't think I really realised that until I was actually a proper adult.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think I spent a lot of time when I was a lot younger. I spent a lot of time really hating my mum and vying for the attention of my biological father because he wasn't around as much. And actually, that didn't drive a wedge between me and my mum, but it made it quite difficult for her to be the loving caregiver that she needed to be, because I didn't make it easy, and I didn't accept responsibility for that, you know, until not that long ago, in the like true, if I'm really honest about things. And it's only been recently when I went to see my parents that I've kind of apologized to them, because I never told them I was bipolar until 4 years ago, and I didn't tell them, and I should have trusted them more to be able to tell them, and I just didn't. And we had a really frank conversation about it when I was at home recently, and it was actually really nice because I wanted to apologize to them because I think I owed them that. But it's only been going through this coaching journey that and actually watching these podcasts and, you know, opening. And I'm quite an open person. I'm a very spiritual person. You know, I stopped assigning blame to anybody else a really long time ago. But this kind of made me, I think, stop assigning blame is the first step. The second step is accepting responsibility. And then there is the other step of actually apologizing to the people that you've been holding that, you know, that fire against or whatever, to say, actually, I could have done something about that. Instead, I felt bitter towards you for all this time.
Yeah, and just to interject very quickly, it's you don't need to blame others, and you don't need to blame yourself.
No,
that's something I think it's something we readily miss. Going, oh, okay, you know, I might take responsibility for other people, or it's like, okay, it must be my fault, and we begin those loops of self-worth chipping away. I call it okay, it must have meant that I wasn't good enough. It must have meant that I was a knobhead or whatever. Again, we can accept those things without going, right, you know, that's all the belief that I form about myself. I'm a knobhead, ergo I do whatever. But it's like to understand the true impact of yourself that you've been brought up in. You can go, okay, I can accept what happened. And as you say, the next step that you naturally took was the apology. Now there's a discussion to be had about how do you craft an apology? What is an apology? But, you know, the fact that you were able to do that to the two people that are most closest to you is a really cool thing.
Yeah, and it felt really nice, actually. And, you know, I'm going to get my mum on probably one of my podcasts, because because I think my mum's got a lot of insight for people who deal with a loved one or somebody in their life that deals with bipolar, or that maybe doesn't understand the signs because that person is, you know, holding on to that information by themselves. And I think I would really like to help people with that. But
nice.
Yeah, it was it was a bit of it was like an eye opener for me, because I think half of the battle as well is not feeling alone. Like, you know,
Mm.
like we listen to this particular, when I listened to this particular podcast and they were talking about, I mean, my mum did love me. It wasn't that I never felt loved. It was just that she was trying to rebuild her life as well, which I don't blame her, because
Mm.
you know, I think what we don't realize when we are children is our parents are not fully fledged adults either. They're fucking learning too. They
We
are
all are.
figuring shit out daily. They have
Yeah.
not got it all sussed. And
No.
actually, I think my mum was 27 when she had me, which was actually back then was quite late, because a lot of people had children when they were a lot younger, like, and they get
Mm-hmm.
married like late teens, early 20s, have a baby within a couple of years. And my mum got married quite a lot later on, and actually she was still incredibly young. And you know, you look to your parents for all these answers and assume that they know everything, and they're just as fucking baffled as you are probably half of the time, and they're doing just their very best to probably keep you alive.
That's it.
I think we should have a little bit more, you know, not, I don't think respect's the right word, but just a little bit more understanding and
Yeah.
patience for that.
Well, I think it harks back to the point we made at the very beginning of, like, sometimes we feel that we're the only person with these issues and problems, and we make it all about ourselves, as if we're a special case. When in reality, as you said, biologically as humans, when we're born, we can't look after ourselves, and like other species of animals that can walk very quickly, go off and find their own food and that kind of thing, we're born and we're like, right, what's going on here? For 9 months, all of our needs were taken care of. We were being fed, kept warm, all that stuff, and then suddenly we go through this traumatic process of labour, and we're like, obviously we come out screaming, going, what the hell is going on? I can't hold my head up, someone has to hold my head. And you look up at caregivers going, right, you must be mum, or you must be dad, or whoever. And it's like, right, I got to do what you say, otherwise I don't survive. So
Yeah.
we start that learning process of going, right, whatever I pick up off you guys, I better do something or adhere to it, otherwise you're not going to stop. You're going to stop looking after me, and I'm going to die. So that's where we're in that state of like, right, I'm in that kind of state of just learning and understanding what you guys are trying to do. And we also have the clash, if you will, of like, well, we feel things naturally. Kids will express exactly what they feel emotionally and without inhibition. So they don't care who's around them. They won't bite their lip or their tongue like we as adults do. We feel exactly the same thing as adults and go, okay, shit, better not say that out loud because it's going to offend people, or I'm going to look weird and stuff like that. But a baby or an adult, a toddler or child will just go off. They don't care. They'll get told off or whatever, the pacifying behaviours and stuff like that. So they get an understanding. Okay, I just felt upset for whatever reason, but I just got told be quiet or don't do that. Do this instead. So what they do is they now start to form positive, negative experiences and emotions.
Yeah.
When in reality, every emotion is neutral. We're the ones that go, right, that's positive, that's negative. I better do more of the positive so I'm more accepted, I'm more loved, I'm good enough. If I do the more of the negative, which is natural, then I'm going to be not accepted, and I'm not good enough, and I might even die. So small instances, they don't have to be like, headline events. It could be something simple as like a kid dropping an ice cream on the floor. To an adult, you're like, oh, well done, I have to get another one, or I have to clean the mess up or whatever. But to a kid, you're like, that's traumatic. I had an ice cream and now it's a splodge on the floor.
Yeah.
They all add up, and people might
And
go, what, ice cream? But
I don't know whether it would change anything, but I wonder how many people actually truly understand the the gravity of the fact that before up to the age of 7, that's
yeah,
when all of our like really important, the foundations of how we go through life and how we see ourselves
yes,
and our relationship with other people, that is where all those pathways are started and formed.
yeah,
And they are the most impactful years. I mean, I wonder how many people would actually change how they treat their children if they really understood the gravity of that. They really understood the gravity of constantly being late picking them up from school, or all these little things that actually as adults we don't see significance in, but are actually changing the pathways of how our children are going to think about their world, themselves, and how people treat them in their future life. It's that generational healing. It's that how many people actually really understand that, because no one teaches you that at school. I mean,
Very true.
no one
Yeah.
sits down with you at school and gives you parenting lessons and say, okay, you're going to go and you're going to have children eventually. This is the stuff that you really need to know that's important. How you treat your child up until the age of 7 is going to be the most informative part of that child's life, and is going to absolutely change the way they see themselves for the entirety of the rest of theirs. So be aware that if you late picking them up from school and you do it consistently, that's potentially going to give them issues later on in life.
Really true. And I do, a lot of this I think comes down to practice, because as you said, like, we're not taught it. We haven't got like a dress rehearsal. You like, you can plan it obviously in like pregnancy. You have antenatal class or whatever you have, and then there's loads more resources out there on like YouTube, books or whatever, like parenting guides, and everybody around you will have an opinion. Do this, do that. Through all stages. So so you're trying to work it out with your own connection and values that you have with the child. But I think a lot of the time, to begin to answer your question, it's like, well, what seems to be the right acceptable thing to do here? So like you try and exhibit behaviors like share, be nice, be good, say this, do that. So it becomes again unwittingly, because we're coming from a good place of like, I want to teach my kid good virtues and manners and behaviors and stuff like that. Now, we're not saying let them run around and be little shits everywhere, but I think if we go along the lines of like, whatever you feel is okay. But the problem is, even using that kind of language, you get labelled that you're too namby-pamby and you can't be like that, and you've got to be like, I've heard phrases, with new parents recently, like, you've got to have tough love, and like, if a child is crying, I'll leave them crying. You've got to cry it out. And like, imagine an adult like that. An adult sitting there and you go, oh, fuck it, leave it,
It's difficult,
Really?
isn't it? Because I think even if you did have a book that was right, telling you how to do it exactly right, you still don't have
what's right though. That's the thing. What's right?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a fucking tightrope. Like,
it is, absolutely. There's no easy or right or wrong answer. That's what I see.
I mean, my son is 26 next year, and we don't have the best relationship now. And because when he was younger, I think he was 3, and my mental health was really bad. My bipolar was really bad. I'd been diagnosed. I hadn't told anyone. I'd really kept it to myself. I thought the best thing for him would be for him to live with his dad, which is the decision that we came to together.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that has, and you do something because you think it's the right thing to do, and that was the decision. And I don't know if you can imagine, but back then it was unheard of. A child didn't live with their dad; they lived with their mum, and they went to their dad's at the weekend. And I spent a lot of time justifying why I'd done it, and I did it for the right reasons. I did it because I thought he would have a much stabler upbringing, having his main caregiver not be mentally unwell. But what that's meant as an adult is that me and my son don't have a great relationship. We have quite a fractious relationship. We speak on and off, and it's very intermittent. And I don't feel now that I've got the right to sort of go, well, look, I want to have a relationship with you. I'm waiting for him to get to a point where he wants to know more about why I did. And I think I owe him that much to not ram it down his throat and hassle him. But equally, time is ticking, and we don't know what's around the corner. And I'm kind of like, and it's
trying to get that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think this is from the podcast. From what I went through as a child, I tried to break that generational shit that happened with me with my son, but actually, inadvertently, what I did was put me in the position of what my dad was to me, to him, and actually created the exact same situation when I was desperate.
In a different way.
The opposite thing. And it's crazy. It's so difficult to break generational stuff like that.
It is.
And I actually sat down and looked at the situation and said, I think this is going to be the best thing to do, but ended up doing exactly the same.
But again, it's our point of saying a lot of this is coming from a good place and trying to break that, be the person that breaks it, not out of like, getting a badge of honor or something, but you went through it, and like, I don't want you to go through the same thing. So you make that conscious step consciously to go, let's do something different, but ultimately it works out that you feel it's a similar impact.
Yeah.
But even to come back to your original question of like, are people aware and what can we do, it's like, I also see it's like from that beginning, and again, it might sound counterintuitive, if you just start treating the human being that they are with respect. Now, it seems funny, like, adult giving kid respect. It's like, but what I mean is like, sometimes you just feel that, like, our children treated as that kind of commodity, or like a pass the parcel object. Oh, the child is happily there, engaging with whatever they're engaging with, whether they're on their own or with kids. But immediately they're picked up and hoisted around everywhere, and then put with among other children, and picked up, and you go over here and you go over there. It's like, just give them the space. Or they're sitting there, and then someone will come up, and I don't know, if there's a song playing or whatever, they try and come up from behind them and like clap their hands. It's like, just let them do what they want to do. It doesn't have to be what's everybody else doing, or you're not doing it, so you should be doing it. It's like, just give them a moment, give them the space, treat them with that kind of respect, and just carry on in that regard. Obviously, striking a balance between, are they constantly, I don't know, shy or alone, and obviously they can't communicate those kind of virtues to you. So that's a little bit of our judgment to go, okay, what's going on there. But it is hard, absolutely. And I by no means have any experience. I'm not a parent. I just go off from like observations and things I see. Yeah. Again, not saying that they're correct, but it's just things you see and pick up. But one thing I wanted to ask you actually on the podcast front is towards the middle, before they talked about the psychedelics that Danny got into, that Lewis said that before you try it, you should work on this.
Yeah, agreed.
But I didn't feel that they answered the question about, well, how do you do that? What do you do up here to get you ready for that kind of thing? So do you want to just explain what they're about to talk about, the psychedelics? Because
So
I can't even remember the names and stuff.
Plant medicine. I think the word psychedelics invokes man-made substances. I think when people...
True, actually, that's true. That's actually probably not the right terminology.
No, but you're not wrong in saying that. But I think when people say psychedelics, the natural thought process is to man-made shit that like make you hallucinate and stuff. But actually, what they are talking about is plant medicine. So they're talking about ayahuasca, bufo, mushrooms, all that kind of stuff. Now, I think what they mean, and it's so I'm going to digress just a little bit. So go back to like 2015, 16, when I finally accepted that I was bipolar, and I'd been on and off like lots of antidepressants before that because I wouldn't take antipsychotics, and I just refused. And then eventually I agreed that we needed to check out these antipsychotics because I wasn't doing very well and my mental health was really erratic. So I then spent about 3 or 4 years on and off like really heavy duty antipsychotics, like the kind of shit that turns you into an absolute zombie. Couldn't walk up the stairs, and gradually I could feel myself slipping away.
And this was prescribed?
Yeah, this was prescribed. So I was on lamotrigine. I've been on. I was initially on lamotrigine, and then I went on to. Oh God, what's it called? Do you know what? I can't remember what it's called. I'm going to have to Google it. Honestly, my brain.
Well, it's kind of a good thing you can't remember it, because then it's like, right, I'm well past taking in that kind of thing now anyway.
Yeah. So it's called. Give me 2 seconds. It's called.
But just while you're looking at that, as I did find it interesting that they talked about being in a. Okay, go on. You found it?
No, go on. No, I've not found it, but I will find it. But they put me on haloperidol. I was on that. Quetiapine. That was it. Lamotrigine, haloperidol, quetiapine. Now, one of my really close friends is a mental health nurse, and she was like, babe, she said, we've been friends for like 20 odd years, and she said, I'm watching you just disappear into this oblivion. and she said, you need to find another way. So in 2018, mid 2018, I made a decision that I was going to get myself off all the antipsychotic medication. So basically, like, I was coming down, and I live on my own with my dog. Well, dogs now, but back then I lived on my own. And I would come downstairs in the middle of the night and cook things and not know that I'd done it the next morning and leave my oven on. And I'd said to my mum and dad, it's dangerous because what if I burnt my house down? I'm absolutely terrified. And like, and I've told my mum and dad about this, but like I'd have to take my antipsychotic medication for about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And by 7:30, I wouldn't be able to function. So then what I started doing was I started doing cocaine, not like shitloads, but like I'd get a bit in the house so that if I wanted to stay awake a little bit like later, I'd have a line, because then I'd be able to hold off the effects of feeling like a zombie for an extra hour or two.
Wow.
But then the antipsychotics were so heavy duty that I was taking them at night time, and it was 11 or 12 o'clock the next day before I was even able to do anything. And I put loads of weight on. I went up to like 14 stone, which was making me miserable. So I decided that I was going to come off all of the antipsychotic medication. So I started coming off it in 2000 and mid 2018. Now you can't just stop taking that kind of stuff.
No,
it's not. So I weaned myself of it, and by January 2019, I was completely off all of the medication, which then the doctors kind of said, actually, if you're not going to take the medication, then you're not going to be able to see your psychiatrist anymore, and you can still be part of the mental health service, but actually you need to take this medication. But I don't want to. It's like they want to keep you on that shit, which was how I felt. It was like. And I was having regular breakdowns, like at least once a month I was suicidal, and I was, just feeling like I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to be here. So I got off medication and started looking for other ways to manage my mental health. So the first thing I did was start taking CBD, which I take every day, and it definitely helps. But I also started not microdosing mushrooms, but if I've had a bad week, I will have some mushrooms, and they don't make you hallucinate. Some of them do. There is stuff out there that absolutely does, as Lewis says, peels back the fabrics of existence and makes you question everything. There is stuff out there that does that, like Bufo, ayahuasca. Depends sort of how your brain is. But I knew that I couldn't start. I've always been really spiritual anyway, but I knew that I couldn't start on that journey of doing that until I got myself out of that frame of mind that I'd already been in because of the antipsychotics. Because I think for me, and I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I know that I'm bipolar, and I know I struggle with extreme mood swings, and I know I can wake up in the morning and be absolutely fine, and something really small can happen and it can completely change the course of my day. Very aware of that. I control it a lot better now than I've ever done. But I think when your doctors and your psychiatrists are constantly telling you how negative it is to have these things, you live in that space of negativity constantly because you don't see any bonuses to it. What I'm realizing is that actually my bipolar brain is incredibly creative, and my bipolar brain, when it's not dumbed down with shitty medication, I mean, I'm not telling anybody to go out there and stop taking your medication. Please don't do that. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that your bipolar brain, your brain with mental health, your brain with whatever it's got going on has got amazing attributes that a lot of medication is completely dumbing down. And I think that there's studies at the moment there are massive big studies at the moment that are actually proving that mushrooms can give you a 6 to 12 month break from your troubles with mental health, and they're seeing this in people. They're actually seeing a marked improvement in people's mental health for being in a controlled environment and giving them like really high doses of magic mushroom for 3 days, watching them regress to points in their lives where there's been trauma brought in, and then coming out the other side of it and not needing to do it again for 6 months rather than having to take a pill every day. And that is like, we've been saying
Well,
for a long time.
well, what I'd add to that is like if it gives you a 6 to 12 month window, as you say, or a break, you could also utilize as an opportunity to go right. I have this, space created now where I can work on myself. All those things, I guess, we were talking about before. Taking your responsibility, being compassionate to yourself and other people. And I think that's beginning to answer the question that I put there. Like, what work on this first?
Yeah.
Because as you said, we're not advocating to stop taking medication, this kind of thing. We're not. It's not a war on doctors or things like that. It's about there are alternatives to just going to a doctor who prescribes a pill or whatever, and just, I'm not saying hope for the best, but it's like, we'll see it that way. Nor are we saying never take any medication and just try and work yourself out. It is a balance between the two.
I mean, I have had 100% less psychotic episodes since I've been off the medication and managing myself holistically than I ever had before when I was on the medication.
Yeah.
And I find, so a bit of a crazy example. A couple of years ago, I applied to do like emergency fostering because I work from home, and I know a few other people that do it, and they've mentioned, you'd be quite, like when they take small children and babies out of bad environments and they need to be somewhere temporarily until they find. So I applied to do that, and I got quite a good way through the process. And they didn't decline me because of my mental health. They declined me because I wasn't medicated by the doctors, despite the fact that I said to them,
dear.
I said to them, so the fact that I haven't had a single psychotic episode, I had a bit of a tough year at the beginning of this year, and I did have a few breakdowns without question, but that was due to like stuff that was going on in my life personally. But I basically, they basically said that if you were still taking medication from the NHS and you were still under the NHS for your mental health, we could tick that yes box and move you on. But because it's a no, it would seem that you're not getting so. And it's almost like, I don't know, it just almost felt like I've been the best I've probably ever been. Don't get me wrong, I still struggle, but I've been the best probably I've ever been off the medication, and I can't move forward in this process because you'd rather, if I was medicated, that would be all right.
And as you've shown yourself, that like, actually when I do take the medication, I actually worsen.
Yeah.
You're like, well, what?
Sorry to interrupt. I know it's something that I've just got.
No, go for it. I was just going to say, it just sounds like such a weird paradox, saying, why do you need just a tick box to say, yeah, but especially if what you're asking to be ticked doesn't work for you as a person. It's like,
it's crazy.
What?
And like, I do still really struggle with travel, and I do still really struggle with, like day to day, if things change or, something throws a curveball at me, it can completely spin out my whole day. But I am getting better, and I am learning, and I'm using all of these holistic tools, to make progress. And obviously coaching has been a massive part of that. But going back to what you were saying about the mushrooms and stuff, I think it's really important that you first of all go into those practices with people that you trust and you feel comfortable with, because you can quite easily spiral through not feeling safe and secure. But also it's important that you go into those kind of rituals and ceremonies in a really good frame of mind, because you are taking mind altering plant medicine that is going to mess with your mind a little bit. And if you're not in a good frame of mind, it can negatively affect you. And, it can, I think, probably rip the fabrics of, how you see things and how you see yourself. And I think it can be really, and I think Lewis talks about, he says about, in his mind, it was breaking from his because he was on this no drugs and no alcohol, and he'd been into rehab and everything they teach you at rehab about not doing mind altering substances and all the rest of it. And he said obviously that he was very much in conflict with himself
Yeah,
about
yeah,
doing it, and he actually had to leave, which was
yeah.
absolutely, I think, the right thing for him to do, because
100%.
if he was in conflict with himself, he absolutely wouldn't have got the most out of it, and it probably would have gone down a negative route.
I like that little line they told him, "Oh, you're going to break the circle." Oh, sorry. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to, just put myself through shit that I don't want to do at
Yeah.
this moment.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I mean, I think we all work on ourselves, and I'm saying this to you, and I'm saying this as a collective to the people that I've recently started meeting through my coaching journey and through other people that are on their coaching journey and yourself. And I think that we all understand the importance of working on your own mind and positivity, and understand, better than most how we control kind of what's going on internally, rather than letting external factors control us.
Yeah,
But I think I am a big advocate of plant medicine. Definitely. I mean, my mum and dad take CBD every day now, for various reasons I'm not going to go into because that's personal for them. Um, and sort of anyone that I get to preach about it, I think CBD is a really good stepping stone for people that, it doesn't get you high because there's no THC in it. But actually, what it does do for your body are really good things. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety, and it isn't for everybody. There are people out there that don't do very well with CBD. The same way that there are people out there that don't do very well with ibuprofen and bloody paracetamol. There's always going to be an exception to the rule. But I think now, and my parents will tell you this, before they go and do anything doctor wise, they will ask me first. Like, they use coconut oil now if they've got dry skin or if they've got a cut, because it's really, really good to help and enable healing. And I've recently got them interested in lion's mane mushroom, which is really good for brain function and actually is known to rebuild like brain function and neural pathways, for your entire life. And now they'll come to me and they'll ask me about stuff. What I started doing is I started looking at what my body was lacking for why I was feeling like it, and what I could put back in naturally that was gonna, and it's the best I've ever been. I mean, I'm still not right, but I'm the closest I've ever been.
I just think you've highlighted just the possibilities that are there. Beyond the stigmatisms that we readily just pick up from, I don't know, conscious bias or whatever. You say, you hear terms like psychedelics or mushrooms or, that kind of space, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Plant medicine, nah, forget that. Because we've got that conditioning and experience of, like, if I'm not well or whatever, I go to a doctor, which is absolutely fine. Again, we're not going to say don't go to a doctor, but it's there's more and more in space now, in all of our spaces, that there is more info available and more tangible proof of these kind of methods working. As you said, it's not for everybody, but it's an opportunity for us to go, okay, well, what else can we do? A quick example I have is that my mum years ago had a long-standing shoulder problem, not through like an injury or an impact, but just didn't feel right, got a lot of pain. And when she went to doctors and physio here, they were saying, oh, maybe a frozen shoulder, trapped nerve, whatever, but they couldn't work out what it was. And they came to a point of like, well, we just have to sort of cut it open and have a look what's going on. Scans and stuff wouldn't show anything. And before she went under knife, she heard of this sort of like health institute in India, that I think my auntie knows about, whatever. And she's like, yeah, they give you 2 weeks worth, and they do no sort of like medical practices or surgery. It's literally just through holistic methods, right? So they thought, okay, let's give it a go. And it was all about just being in better balance as a person through things like better diet, a little bit of exercise, and just sort of naturally kind of working on yourself, to the extent when she came out the 2 weeks, her shoulder problem had gone.
Yeah.
And it hasn't returned since.
Yeah.
And doctors kind of like, they're not stumped, they're like, oh, okay, it's interesting. So it just showed the possibility of there are other ways to heal things that you just think, oh, I just need to get, surgery or whatever for that. So there's possibilities,
A quick cheeky plug, but this is why. So my website, which I'm still working on, is out there, but I'm still working on it. Which was why I started the website, because I wanted to create a website for people that were looking for alternative ways to manage their whether that be acupuncture or, just meditation, mindfulness, yoga, Reiki, coaching, just to offer somewhere for people to go and find information and to connect with practitioners of these different, these different holistic therapies, and know that this place where they were going for this information wasn't, because there's so much conflicting information out there. If you Google anything related to holistic therapies, the first stuff that's going to come up with NHS and, the stuff that pays to be there, and none of it is going to take you away from where they're going to make money. That's just my personal opinion, and I know there'll be people.
There is an element of that. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think I wanted to create a safe place for people to ask questions and talk to people about, like other practices and other ways to manage.
That's an awesome space that you're holding. I'm sure it's going to thrive and do really well. I just want to touch on one last question, because I know we're coming up to the hour already, unbelievably, right?
It always does.
I know. At the end, right? Danny, towards the end, I should say, Danny mentions that he was presenting his, I think, seminar or whatever he does to people, and he had this conversation or heard God's, his words, God's voice saying, you can't help other people be what they want to be unless you do that for yourself, and that includes forgiveness. So in his case, it was forgiving his father.
Yeah.
But I just thought, okay, that was an interesting thing that he seemed to channel, because he brought it back to the idea of, the thing he said at the beginning of, you can go chase things like, more money and success and those external things, but to what cost?
Yeah.
Now that did resonate with me. What I heard from that is like, I was in an industry in investment banking where you just, you work. It seems glamorous. It seems highly rewarding, all that kind of crap. But you burn out. Most people burn out.
Yeah.
Unless you've got some perverse fashion about it, or passion, I should say. You burn out. And then that's when you're left going, right, what now?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that when he said that, like, to help others, you need to be in the place you want to be. That does make sense, because obviously then Lewis chimed in saying, he's heard coaches saying he can only coach somebody to the extent of which you've been coached or have gone to, which is true. It's like, you don't want to, that's, again, I think it's about striking that balance of not appearing all knowing and saying the way I did it is the only way and anyone else is wrong. Versus going, I can show you things that I might not necessarily have gone through. I'm not so sure about that, because I'm of that perspective that it does come down to common things that we all have, like self-worth, and the perspective of you've got your own answers in you already. Whether you like them or not, that's up to you.
Yeah.
But you have the answers. Then it's what we're saying. You have the opportunities to then work with those answers. And sometimes just finding those answers is a major step in itself.
So what you're saying is that you don't have to have gone on a journey to help somebody else through theirs.
Yes, or exactly replicate the path. So for example, if we take a topic, say weight loss,
right?
Somebody is on a weight loss journey and wants coaching or what have you with that. My perspective at the moment is that's completely fine for you to be on. Have I trodden that path? No, but what I can work with you on is what's led you onto that path at the moment. I'm not going to say, right, you're on the wrong path ultimately. We could do all that work and go, okay, you still want to be on your weight loss journey? That's completely fine. That's when the, specific niche-based coaches or whomever, specialists, might be able to help further with, like, techniques or whatever. But what I'm saying is your approach now comes from a place of higher self-worth rather than just going, wait, if I lose weight or progress my career or get more money or get a partner or get whatever, that's what will make me happy. Because sometimes a lot of people approach that, because I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show before, the most common New Year's resolution, for example, is to lose weight. On 31st December, 1st of January, everybody gets a gym membership, promises I'm never going to eat chocolate or alcohol or whatever again.
Yeah.
I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and run around like Rocky and this kind of thing. And then like mid-January, you know, say 3 times a week at the gym turns to maybe 2 times a week to 1 time a week by the end of January. And February, everybody, well, mostly just goes, oh, sod it, I can't do it. And they then perpetuate it by going, I've got no willpower. I self-sabotaged. I can't do it. I got no motivation. What are you doing? You're chipping away at your self-worth.
Of course you are.
But what you didn't do in the first place is go, why do I want to do this? And it's okay if you don't want to. There's so many voices around us that go, you got to do this, man. It's be good for you. Be good. It's like, I get it. But until I start saying it to me, that's where you end up in this like, I'll do it. I won't do it. I'll do it. I can't do it.
See, I think I kind of had that a little bit differently, because I think they're not saying that as a coach or as a leader or as a consultant that you don't have the ability to help people if you've not been through it. But I think what they're saying is that if you've been on a journey yourself, you're better equipped to
No, true, for sure.
people
For
that
sure.
are going on that same journey. Like, I mean, 6 months ago, I wasn't leaving the house. Like, literally, I was planning my supermarket trips at specific times. If they moved anything in the supermarket, it would screw me up. And I was barely leaving the house. And during my journey, my first step was to get myself a little cleaning job, because it means I have to leave the house every day, and it's 7 days a week. And I've been on that journey. And I think that I would be better equipped to help someone that was struggling with that same journey. You could still help them, but you wouldn't be as equipped as I would
For
be
sure.
to help that person. So I think that in general, for me, what I heard is that in order to really truly be able to help someone, you need to have worked on yourself, and you need
Yes.
to have had a certain amount of positive experience that allows you to relate to that person.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Am I missing what you're saying, or am I?
No. Actually, what it actually adds on to my last point, really, of like, in and around that, he was saying that like, when you take an action or do commit to a behavior, it's actually a reflection back to you of what you want. I call it, you reflect what you project. So, for example, by forgiving somebody, you're actually forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
So I think it ties in the aspects of take responsibility for yourself, but also a lot of these things are done from your own perspective of, right, if I'm forgiving somebody, I'm not saying, right, you know, you can get away with anything now and, you know, I take all your blame and all that kind of thing. No, it's more like it's you forgiving yourself for maybe having that hatred or that vengeance or whatever emotion that was that you were, you know, trying to cling on to or drag out. But this is like, it's a message to yourself. And I think that works in our space where, like, when we're trying to, we're all, you know, most of us, as I say, are coming from a good place. We're trying to help people, show them ways, and also taking it a bit step level further, that what we're saying isn't gospel. We're not saying this is the only way. If you don't do it, you're an idiot. If you follow somebody else, you're a fool. It's like, it's just possibilities.
Yeah.
And yes, that comes with levels of enhancement. If you've been there, then of course someone's going to go, okay, you might have been there and seen what I see and stuff like that. But there are other ways of going, okay, ultimately I just say it comes back to possibilities, and when you exude, it is a reflection to yourself. So I saw, and I'll share this actually on my social media shortly, a really, really nice message from a special person in my life who shared the aspect of, I'm here to share love. And I thought it was a really, really, really nice message.
Yeah.
And that in turn makes me want to do the same thing. Because for me, it's like, if I share it, that's what I'm looking for too. And that's all I sort of put it at.
Yeah, that's actually incredibly powerful, and it is very true. But I think naturally, because we've been on this coaching journey, we have spent a lot of time working on ourselves. So although your journey, as you were saying before, isn't specific to weight loss, for example, you have been on a parallel journey, albeit not
Exactly.
the same one. So I do get what you're saying, and I think maybe I've generalized it too much, but it maybe is like the broader picture is if you've been on a journey and you've come out of the other side of that journey better for it, and you've understood more about
Absolutely.
yourself, then actually you are equipped to coach other people through their journey, no matter what that journey is, because
Yeah.
you've understood the work that needs to go in, and it's not about what the journey is. It's about understanding the work within that journey and understanding.
And like they said in the podcast, you have the answers already. They're internal.
Yeah,
No one's got the magic key or answer out there. You've got it already.
yeah,
Got them already, I should say.
yeah. That's a good podcast.
It is. It's really, really good. And they say very, very accessible and digestible because it's a nice length. So yeah, the shit. I know the link will be in the episode below in the description, wherever we'll put it there. And
And next week it's
yeah,
yours.
it is. Yeah, I'm deliberating over which one. I'm going to double check how long it is for a start.
Oh no, do you know what? It's all right. I don't mind. It's all good.
No, it's cool, but you're right. Like we're obviously looking to turn around episodes fairly frequently. So I'm aware of that, but it might well be from the same series, Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. So yeah, tune in next time for the next one. And as always, do leave your thoughts, comments, pointers, etc. Just love to make this interactive, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
Yeah. Thank you very much for tuning in, joining us even. Right, we'll see you all soon. Bye.